Welcome friends to this fifth lecture of week 9 or module 9, and in this week we are actually talking about the soil pollutants and pollutant as well as the soil solution interaction. And today we are going to talk about the solubility of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. In the short, we know this compound as PAH, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, in water polar organic mixture. So, we will be basically talking about the in details about the PAH, their structure, their properties and their solubility in water polar organic mixture. So, if we start with the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon or PAH, this is basically a ubiquitous environmental pollutant generated primarily during the incomplete combustion of organic materials. We will see the sources of this PAH in this coming slides. So basically, these environmental pollutants generate due to the incomplete combustion of organic materials like coal, oil, then petrol and wood, and basically they are colorless, mostly colorless. Sometimes they are white or pale yellow solids. So they are very toxic in nature as well as uh, they are they are toxic in nature and they are also environmentally persistent. So that is why it is a problematic compound for environment, because it is both toxic as well as environmentally persistent. So it can remain in the environment for longer duration of time. Here I have just presented one example of this PAH. So the chrysin is one of the examples of this polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, and you can see here there are multiple benzene ring attached to each other. So that is why it is called the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Okay. So let us move ahead and see what is the toxicity of PAH. Well, the mechanism of toxicity is considered to be interference with the function of cellular membrane as well as with enzyme system which are associated with the membrane. So basically it disrupts the function of the cellular membranes as well as the enzymatic activity which are associated with the cellular membrane. Remember that this compound or PAH is a basically group of compounds. So these PAH compounds are both carcinogenic and also it can produce mutagenic effects. So and also they are the source of, they are basically potent immunosuppressants. So these are the major drawbacks or major ill effects of this PAH to as far as the human health hazards are concerned. So that is why they are considered as important environmental pollutant. So let us talk about the sources of PAH. I have already told you that it is a product of incomplete combustion from different compounds like petroleum, coal, wood. So let us see in details what are the other sources. So obviously, as I have written here, it is basically this, the major source is incomplete combustion from either natural combustion sources like forest or brush fire. So forest fire, as you know, it is a natural combustion source, or brush fire is a natural combustion source. So basically incomplete combustion, when the incomplete combustion happens in the forest and brush fire, it generates the PAH, or man-made combustion sources like automobile emissions and cigarette smoke. So you can see both natural as well as anthropogenic combustion sources or man-made combustion sources. When we when they results in incomplete combustion, they basically generates these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Now, basically these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, you can, since I also mentioned that they are ubiquitous in nature. So, you can found them in air, water as well as in soil. So, they are ubiquitous in nature. Now, although there are many pH, most regulations, analysis and data reporting focus only a limited number of pH. pH is basically a group of compounds. So, however, as far as the regulations, analysis and data are concerned, we have a limited number, we are focused on a limited number of pH, typically between 14 to 20 individual pH compounds. So, we will see those pH compounds in our coming slides, but let us discuss in details what are the natural and anthropogenic sources for this pH. So, you can see the natural sources are natural petroleum, vegetative decay, then rare minerals, plant synthesis. So, obviously, when there is a fires as well as volcanic eruptions and ultimately produce some incomplete combustion, then they generate the pH compounds. As far as the anthropogenic impacts are concerned, some sources are petroleum spills, then pesticide formulations, then sewage sludge. We have already discussed sewage sludge in our previous lectures, and also pH contaminated media. So, all these are important anthropogenic sources, and when they produce these incomplete combustion, they also produce the pH. Now, what are those anthropogenic compounds like road dust, then vehicle, internal combustion from the vehicles, then jet aircraft, incineration, wood burning, cigarette smoke, then coking plants, and also other industries and processes and miscellaneous burning. So, all these basically when they generate, they generate the pH when when they undergo basically the incomplete combustion. So, as you can see, both the natural natural sources as well as anthropogenic sources are responsible for the generation of pH, and this pH can be found both in they can be found in all air, water and soil. So, that is why they are ubiquitous in nature. Now, here couple of examples of pH compounds. I told you that it is a group of compounds. So, we can see here this is an anthracene, then phenanthrene you can see, then phenylene, then tetracene, then chrysene. We have already seen the structure of chrysene in our previous slide, then triphenylene, then pyrene, then pentacene, then benzopyrene, then coralline, then benzopyrrolene, then coronine, then ovalin and benzofluorine. These are all pH compounds. Now, pH, the name itself suggests that it is basically polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So, there must be more than one cycle of aromatic rings. So, basically the pH consists of two or more benzene rings. So, obviously, the characteristic features of pH structure is it has two or more benzene rings arranged in various configuration with hydrophobicity increasing with molecular weight. These are basic, they are hydrophobic in nature, and their hydrophobicity increases with the increase in molecular weight. So, basically, we can say that when the number of rings increases, obviously their hydrophobicity also increases. So, they also can be found as industrial effluents or arising from other anthropogenic sources. So, we have seen already the sources of pH, different industrial sources, industrial effluents and also different anthropogenic sources in our previous slides. So, they are characterized by a long life and hazardous at low concentration. In the previous slide, we have seen that they are environmentally persistent. So, they can remain in the environment, soil, air as well as water for long duration of time, and at the same time they are very hazardous or toxic at very low concentration. So, these are some of the features of this characteristic features of this pH compound. Now, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, we have already seen that they have two or more fused aromatic rings with a pair of carbon atoms shared between the rings in their molecules. So, obviously, we can see here in case of naphthalene, then phenanthrene, then benzo, fluorothene, and so on and so forth, then fluorine, then obviously pyrene, so you can see the lot of pH compounds, they are having the fused benzene rings, and with a pair of carbon atoms shared between the ring in their molecules. So, obviously, the pair of carbon atoms, as you can see here, they are shared between their molecules. Now, pH contains up to 6 fused aromatic rings are often known as the small pH, and those containing more than 6 aromatic rings are known as large pH. So, obviously, within the pH compounds also there are there is a classification, the small pH and large pH. The small pH are those pH which have 6 rings, up to 6 rings, and those which are having more than 6 aromatic rings are known as the large pH compounds. So, the simplest pH as defined by the International Agency for Research on Cancer are phenanthrene. Okay. So, phenanthrene, as you can see, this is the structure of the phenanthrene. So, this is called the this is phenanthrene. So, as far as this International Agency for Research on Cancer, this phenanthrene and anthracene. So, anthracene structure is also given here. So, phenanthrene and anthracene, these two are the simplest pH, which both contains 3 fused aromatic rings. As you can see, this is 1, this is 2 and 3 fused aromatic rings in case of phenanthrene. However, in case of anthracene, this is 1, then 2 and 3. So, 3 fused aromatic rings in case of anthracene. Now, on the other hand, smaller molecules such as benzene are not pH, because in case of benzene there is only one aromatic ring. Now, naphthalene, which consists of 2 coplanar 6 membrane rings, as you can see here, this is the naphthalene. So, naphthalene, which consists of 2 coplanar 6 membered rings sharing an edge, is another aromatic hydrocarbon. Therefore, it is not a true pH. So, this is not a true pH, though is referred as a bicyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. So, these naphthalene, this contains 2 fused aromatic rings. So, in the true sense it is not a pH, however, it is sometimes referred as the bicyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So, however, as far as the structure of pH are concerned, so obviously we can see phenanthrene and anthracene, both of which are showing 3 fused ring structure, aromatic ring structure, are known as the simplest pH among all the pH compounds. So, if we see the physical characteristics of the pH, we can see there are certain important points. First of all, we can see that pH compounds have high melting and boiling points, and they have low vapor pressure and very low aqueous solubility. So, since they are non-polar in nature, they are having very low solubility in polar water. So, this aqueous solubility of pH decreases for each additional ring. So, basically they are having very low solubility in water, and the solubility further decreases with each additional ring. Now, remember that pH are very soluble in organic solvent because they are highly lipophilic in nature, that means fat soluble in nature. pH also manifests various functions such as light sensitivity, heat resistance, conductivity, emittability, corrosion resistance and other physiological actions. So, let us see what are the other features of these pH compounds. Now, pH also possesses very characteristics UV absorbance spectra. Now, each ring structure has a unique UV spectrum, thus each isomer has a different UV absorbance spectrum, and these absorbance spectrum for these pH compounds are useful for their identification. So, each compound in the under the pH group basically has their own unique UV absorbance spectrum. Now, most pH are also fluorescent, that means they emit characteristics wavelength of light when they are excited, when the molecules absorb light. So, basically they can emit characteristics wavelength of light or fluorescent when they are excited. So, most pH compounds are also fluorescent. So, these are the major features of these pH compounds. So, let us see what are the uses of these pH compounds. First of all, we can see the acynaphthalene. Now, acynaphthalene basically used for manufacturing of pigments, dyes, plastic, pesticides and pharmaceuticals. If you see the anthracene are used as a diluent for wood preservatives and manufacture of dyes and pigments. If you see the fluoranthene, then basically it is used as a manufacture of agrochemicals, dyes and pharmaceuticals. Fluorine is basically manufacture of pharmaceuticals, pigments, dyes, pesticides and thermoset plastic. And also phenanthrene, if you see the phenanthrene is used as a for the manufacture of resins and pesticides. And if we consider pyrene, pyrene is also used as a for the manufacture of pigments. So, you can see that these pH compound has a very good applicability for industrial purpose for the production or manufacturing of different pigments, plastics, polymers, pesticides and pharmaceuticals. So, we have already seen the sources of pH. It is basically incomplete combustion of organic materials such as coal, oil and wood based from either natural sources or anthropogenic sources. Now, if we see the transport and fate of pH, this is very important. How pH can move from land to aquatic system and ultimately they produce the human health hazards. So, this figure shows very good representation of the transport and fate of pH. So, you can see that when there is an open burning and also due to the leaching of from the vehicles and also due to the in case of land. So, if we first consider the land, we see the transport of this pH in the land system can occur through leaching, through dry deposition as you can see, and also through wet deposition, okay, and from industrial emission. And so, these are some of the reasons, and vehicular emissions. And also when they go to the soil, they produce different types of biodegradation and ultimately they reach into the groundwater, and ultimately they discharge into different water bodies. When they discharge into the different water bodies, they basically they dissolve, these pH basically dissolve into the water, and then they are basically affecting the biota which is present in the aquatic system. Also due to the rainfall, there are wet deposition. Now, this discharge which we are seeing through this blue arrow is basically from river, then runoff and different effluents from the industrial sources, and also in the aquatic system we can see dry deposition, and then oil leaks from different different tankers. So, these are some of the reasons through which we can see the pH compounds in the aquatic environment. And and also these pH compounds and or petroleum compounds basically go through photo oxidation and biodegradation, and these are the important processes for their different as far as the fates of this pH are concerned. Now, if we see the human effect or inhalation, in case of due to the inhalation like active smoking or passive smoking and air, through these inhalation like active smoking, passive smoking and air, these pH compounds can enter into the human body, okay. They can be retained into the human body. Ingestion, how? Due to the vegetables, roots and leaves, okay. Then meats and fish, and also smoked, grilled and fried, and all these things when they ingest, human ingest, they basically uptake these pH through these compounds. So, again if we summarize, in the land we can see the we can see different sources of pH. First of all, the wet deposition, and then dry deposition, also vehicular emission, and also the generation from different types of industries. And this petroleum basically goes to the soil and then undergoes biodegradation, and ultimately they will be discharged into the water bodies through rivers, effluents and runoffs, and then affecting the biota of the aquatic system, and then finally go for biodegradation, photooxidation, and also here you can see wet deposition and dry deposition are the other sources, and also different types of oil spills from different tankers or petroleum rigs can occur. So, these are some of the sources in the as far as the human consumptions are concerned, inhalation ingestions are the major route through which the pH are transporting inside our body. So, if you see the pH compounds in the soil, there are certain important points. Now, atmospheric pH are continuously deposited to the earth by dry and wet deposition process. Now, some of these pH are from nearby sources such as automobile exhaust from adjacent roadways, other pH, whereas other pH are from distant sources and have been carried various distance through the air. In the meantime, pH can be added to the soil in fill materials containing the pH. So, when pH are deposited onto the earth's surface, they become basically mobile in nature. So, since the majority of the pH in the soil will be bound to soil particles, the most important factors influencing pH mobility of the particulates in the subsurface will be sorbent particle size and the pore throat size of the soil. Such pore throat can be defined as the smallest opening found between the individual grains of soil. So, if particles to which the pH are sorbate cannot move through the soil, then the movement of pH will be limited because they tend to remain sorbate to the particles. So, this is how the movement of pH within the soil is basically controlled. Now, if we see other factors for pH retention in the soil, the tendency of the pH to be sorbate on soil depends on both the properties of the pH and the soil. So, therefore, pH sorption is one of the process that governs the soil mobility of individual pH. Numerous studies pH related studies of the correlation of the partition coefficient with the soil properties have found that the organic carbon content usually yields the most significant correlation, obviously because organic compounds has their own attractive adsorption capacities. Now, these octanol water partitioning coefficients of pH is also important in determining the sorption of pH into the soil. The octanol water partitioning coefficient we generally denote this as KOW is related to the solubility of an organic compound in water. So, as the KOW increases, the aqueous solubility decreases and the tendency for sorption to a particle soil increases. Now, nevertheless, the KOW and solubility can affect pH mobility in soil. Other factors such as soil conductivity also have significant influence in the pH movement. Now, if we consider the pH retention in the sediment, then pH are deposited to the sedimentary environment by similar processes which we have seen already for the soil. Now, in rural areas, the pH sorbate to atmosphere. Atmospheric particles can settle on the surface of the lakes, streams and oceans by dry and wet deposition. They are dispersed by currents and eventually become integrated with the environment. On the other hand, sediments near urban centers and influence atmospheric by in atmospheric deposition of the pH. Now, they also receive inputs of pH from storm and sanitary sewer effluents as well as roadway runoff. Now, eventually some of the pH will be sorbate to the particles, settle and become part of the sedimentary record. So, basically if you see the pH movement in soil and sediment, they are basically resemble to each other. So, their interaction to the sediment and soil somewhat matches between each other. Also, we have seen that once pH are incorporated into the sediment, they are somewhat immobile because their non-polar structure inhibit them from dissolving in the water. Now, nevertheless, pH are not completely insoluble, particularly the lower molecular weight pH. So, these lower molecular weight pH are somewhat soluble in water. The small amounts of pH do dissolve and become included in the pore water where they are bioavailable. So, the pore water which contains small amount of water, they are able to dissolve some amount of pH, and then this is how the pH become bioavailable. Now, the presence of pore water organic colloids can increase the concentration of pH beyond their aqueous solubility, because pH will be sorbate onto these organic colloids. So, since this pore water organic colloids can also further increase the concentration of the pH because of their inherent attractive power, inherent solubilizing power, because these pH are basically hydrophobic in nature. So, this in turn are easily transported through the pore spaces of the sediment. Thus, the sorption of the colloids can increase the mobility and bioavailability of pH into the sediment. So, this is how the pH can move from one place to the another place and making themselves bioavailable. Now, if we see the solubility of organic solvents under a waste disposal site, this graph shows, so that these are some important graphs. So, basically the characteristics of waste disposal site includes the presence mixture of inorganic and organic pollutants and mixture of water and polar and non-polar organic solvents. So, if you see the waste disposal site is a complex site, as and different complex biological and biogeochemical processes are going on. So, you can see in those waste disposal site or landfill site inorganic and organic pollutants as well as mixture of water and polar and non-polar organic solvents. Now, in this figure, in these three figures, you can see the solubilities of naphthalene, then anthracene, then pyrene and chrysene are plotted as fraction of solvent or co-solvent in binary and tertiary methanol acetone water system. So, this is a tertiary methanol acetone and water system. So, this is a tertiary system and these are the binary system, and so here we can see that these are basically we are plotting the log of solubility and here volumetric fraction of acetone. And also here in the second figure we are the x axis we are producing the volumetric fraction of methanol, and the y axis we are putting the log of solubility, and these graphs are showing for naphthalene, anthracene, pyrene and chrysene. Okay. So, let us see what are the inference which we can make from these graphs. Now, solubility, we can see that the solubility of several polyaromatic hydrocarbon pH in basically here methanol water. So, this is basically methanol water binary mixture, this is acetone water binary mixture, and this is third one is the ternary mixture solvent, that is methanol, acetone and water. So, here it is a binary mixture, this is another binary mixture, this is a ternary mixture of solvents like methanol, acetone and water, where one co-solvent volume fraction remains fixed at 0.5, where while that of the second co-solvent varies with water. So, here in the third figure you can see that one co-solvent, here there are two co-solvent with water. So, water and then the co-solvents are methanol and acetone. So, one co-solvent volume fractions remain fixed at 0.5, and while the other second co-solvent varies with the water. So, what we can see from these graphs, so it can be observed that the solubilities of pollutants increases with increasing proportion of co-solvent in the water co-solvent mixture. So, you can see here in this binary mixture of water acetone and in this binary mixture of water methanol, we can see as the co-solvent fraction increases, a proportion of this co-solvent increases just in this direction, that is volume fraction of acetone as well as volume fraction of methanol. We can see the solubilities of the pollutants also increases, as we can see here with the positive slope. Okay. So, this is the major inference we can see from these plots. Okay. Now, the third plot to show this behavior in ternary solvents. So, we have seen the increase in solubility of the pollutants with increasing volume fraction of a co-solvent in a binary mixture. However, for a ternary mixture solvent like methanol acetone and water system, one of the co-solvent volume was kept as 0.5, while the second co-solvent was varied with the inverse relationship. Now, we can see that the use of an insoluble solvent as co-solvent could enhance the acquired solubility of hydrophobic organic pollutants in water, leading to possible increase in soil and groundwater contamination. So, as you can see, as we are basically fraction of co-solvent is increasing, so solubility of solubility of organic pollutants are basically are increasing. So, the use of insoluble solvent as co-solvent could enhance the aqueous solubility of this hydrophobic organic pollutant, as you can see in water, leading to possible increase in possible increase in soil and groundwater contamination. So, these are some of the important inference. So, guys, let us wrap up our module 9, and these are the references which I used for this module 9. These are very good references you can follow. For example, soil pollution process by and dynamics written by Yarrow, Calvet and Prost, as well as this very good review, that is a review on polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons written by Afdal Shafi and Mansoor in 2016, and also Cheney this potential effect of waste constituents on the food chain written by Cheney, Gobran Miyamoto, dissolution rate of gypsum in aqueous salts, and also these articles by Lindsay, McBride, Rao et al, as well as Yalklowski, and so these are some very good references. You should you should learn, you should consult in more details, and to gain more comprehensive knowledge of pollutant soil and soil solution interaction. And if you find any difficulties, just feel free to email me and let me know your queries, and I will be more than happy to answer your queries. Thank you very much. Let us meet in our week 10 lectures to discuss some other aspects of environmental pollution. Thank you.